for inviting me. As you can see from my name, so I do come from Ukraine. I was born in Ukraine a long time ago. However, I left almost 30 years ago at the beginning of 90s, and I got my education in the UK, and I was living in the UK for some years, and then for the last 20 years I've been living in Norway, and did my PhD in Norway, and I work as a professor now at the University College in Austria. So, of course, when the invitation came from the people of Ukraine, obviously I couldn't say no, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Obviously, yeah. So just a few words. Yeah, this is the place where I work. It's a not so big university. It's located in the southern part of Norway, approximately an hour and a half drive from Oslo to the south, really on the Swedish border. It's around 8,000 students. We've got 4 different faculties, and I work in the teacher education faculty, and around 600 employees. So, in the world scale, it's not a big university, and also in Norwegian scale, it's not really a big university. However, we are ambitious, and well, that's how it looks in winter. However, in this part of Norway, we don't have much snow. The climate is really mild here, so because we're really close to the coast, the fjords are there, so we don't have much snow in winter. And the picture as this it doesn't happen often. However, it does. We can have minus temperature outside sometimes, but not so much snow. Just to see on the map, locate us on the map before I start. So if you can see Oslo, and this the pointer is really showing where Halden is. This is where the place where the university is. I live in Oslo, by the way, and I commute, so it's a 1.5 hour drive, a nice drive, not so far. And it's really, if you can see on this picture, it's really on the Swedish border. So it's about 10 kilometers from the Swedish border. So people that live in Halden can walk across the border to Sweden. And it's really easy. The border is always, well, I mean, it's been easy until recently, until the COVID started, So now it's not so easy to cross, but this is really kind of unusual situation we're in. However, we've got lots of communication with people in Sweden and Swedish universities and so on, particularly because of our geographical location, that we are very close to Sweden. Yeah, just give you a taste of the place. On the right picture, you can see it's a kind of a small city on the bank of the coast of the sea. So this is the fjord, but also is famous for its ancient fortress that was built many centuries ago to protect Norway from Sweden again. So we can see it on the left picture here, and now it's a beautiful museum here. So if you one day in Norway, Halden is definitely a place to visit, in particular the ancient fortress, which is big, and it's made in like a park now with lots of museums and nice cafes and restaurants. So please welcome. That was a short introduction to where I come from, to the university I work in. And basically, in my presentation, I'm going to talk about learning in online environments, and this is what I do. I'm the head of the research group, and what we do, we develop online courses for teachers that aim at developing teachers' so-called professional digital competence. In Norway, there is very much pressure on teachers to be digitally competent, be able to use digital tools in classrooms. And there is lots of initiatives to enhance in one or another way this teachers' digital competence. So what we do, we develop online environments so that both students that are kind of trained to be teachers at the university and the teachers at work can sign up for this course and can kind of improve their digital competence, learn some software that can be used for teaching in classrooms. And so obviously we collect some data and we do some research, because online learning is quite a new phenomenon. So it's interesting to understand basically how people learn online. So what resources are in use, how they develop understanding of these resources, and how can we develop online courses in such a way that people would be able to make meaning of learning process online. So just to start with, so all these changes have happened just in the past years, and they have affected our life quite significantly. Obviously, we don't go outside to take a taxi. Obviously, we use some app, and this is very common. Netflix is outcompeting cinemas, and obviously Airbnb is starting to outcompete hotels. And so, so these are just some signs of the digital revolution we live in. However, the latest events and the COVID pandemic has even contributed more to the online shift that we're experiencing now. I've got this data from the European data portal, which says that, well, basically, COVID pandemic affected approximately 1.6 billion children and in 195 countries that had to close their schools at universities at some point, and stop their traditional classroom tuition. And so UNESCO conducted a survey, and they found out that only 61 countries out of 195 implemented one on another way of distance learning. And out of these 61 countries, only 10% of the countries have had actually the capacities, digital capacities, to make this online learning effective. However, none of the countries have any digital curriculum that could be implemented really smoothly when the transition happened to online learning. So on this map, you could see in red the areas where the schools are still closed or closed in selected areas. And yellow, which prevail, the schools open and with limitations. And it's the same situation in Norway. So it's really kind of flexible. At the moment, all the students are encouraged to stay at home and have home tuition, online tuition in schools, and only younger children are in school. But again, the conditions are really flexible. The moment somebody is discovered with the COVID positive test, the whole classes and teachers and so sent to quarantine home, and the tuition happens online. So obviously, so the demand is, so it's obviously urged the demand to transfer to online learning, which actually has been happening gradually. But of course, this pandemic accelerated these demands in enormous speed. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk, as I said, I'm going to talk about learning online and what is the demand. I'm going to talk about some psychological premises that we build our research upon, considering learning as a psychological process and the components of the online courses as psychological tools that students can use to make meaning of the resources in online courses. So I'm going to talk about Vygotskian perspective on instrumental and psychological tools. And again, Vygotskian and Galperin's legacy, who considerably extended Vygotskian perspective. And then the cultural historical approach to design digital environments. And some concluding remarks that we open a discussion at the end of my presentation. So basically, what is the demand? As I said already, so online learning and online courses and massive open online courses and different forms of online learning have become a hot topic, a major topic in the education, particularly in the last year. And it's not just only the pandemic that triggered this overcome to online learning, but also, the developments in the software and the hardware innovations, because, the software is much more accessible for people without any particular competence. So it's much easier for us to understand, how to develop a course using the modern software. So it's not as complicated. So it doesn't actually require this particular IT skills as it used to be some years ago. And so obviously, because it's so accessible, and of course the demand on teachers on all levels, on school level and university level to shift to online learning. Obviously, this imposes the demands, how to urges the question to understand how to design these online courses so that the learning environment would be sensible for the students, and the students would be able to drive their learning online. Because, to the end of the day, learning online is very much solely endeavor. Students are sitting at home in front of their computer with lots of resources presented for them in these online courses, and they have to make sense of these resources themselves. Basically, the teacher is not there as it is in traditional education. So the demand is there, how to compose these online courses so that the students would be able to progress and make sense of the resources that we suggest for the students, the tasks and so on, that we suggest the students engage in. So when the first MOOCs appeared, MOOCs, and we know the MOOCs stand for Massive Open Online Courses, lots of traditional classroom methods such as lectures and group discussions and multiple choice assignments have been widely used, and they're still widely used in an online courses. So basically what we do, we take the methods of traditional classroom teaching and then transfer them in the online environments. However, the more research the more we know how people learn online, the more we get assured and get evidence that these traditional methods do not really work. So online pedagogy differs from the learning, from the pedagogy in traditional classrooms. And so particular efforts have been put to come up with the blueprints of online environments. So how to design online environments so it should be effective and support students' learning. So there have been some influential studies of Salmon starting from 2013, who offered a 5-stage design to online courses, like, for example, access and motivation, online socialization, information exchange, knowledge construction and development. So he says that this component should be taken in the design of online course in one way or another. However, if you look at these components, they look kind of vague. So how do we, online socialization, so we can understand this. So probably put students or in one or another form of collaborative groups. So how do we understand knowledge construction and what is development? So it's still it's still not a blueprint. And as practitioners and in educators, we would really appreciate, so tell me what to do first, second, third to develop a course that it would make sense for my students. So Diana Laurelat, she's a professor from London School of Economy. She has taken a more pedagogical approach and outlined a more similar to a blueprint or suggestions how to design online courses. Like, for example, she says it's necessary to orchestrate the work of participants, so the role of the course designer and the teacher facilitating is really important. So it's important to provide a default sequence of activities. So basically structure as a sequential activity order for the students to engage in. So it's necessary to differentiate core and optional activities. So the main activities that students have to engage in, but also then activities that can be optional. We need to provide links to issue-oriented discussion forums. So students' discussions are really important. Provide ways for participants to share ideas, create activities to build up for making work plans. So again, these are more kind of useful approaches to design. However, they're still not a blueprint. Again, if I am to design a course, how do I go from first, second, third? What do I do second, third to design a sensible course for my students, so students would be able to engage and drive their learning themselves. So again, and this work still needs to be done. This work is still missing, and this is basically what we in Ostwald University College hope to contribute to and do. So we collect data from online courses to understand how people learn, and we try to make an attempt to design on online courses, to come up with design principles I'm going to talk about later in this presentation. So again, learning design is a meta theory. So it's not really, it's because it can be applied to any subject knowledge. So it does not refer to subject knowledge as such, but it actually offers an approach how to design a sensible course. The elements of the course, the resources, can be referred as digital tools, obviously, because they're all placed in the digital environments. And learning design, so it has to have a so-called dual perspective. So first, it has to consider learning as a psychological process. And also, it has to address the tension between the digital tools, and the digital tools are really the resources that we put, like textual information on the web page, for example, or multiple choice assignment, tests, or different assignments or discussion forums. All of these elements can be considered as digital tools. So the learning design has to address this tension, between digital tools and the design of online environments. So which means it's important to understand the sequence how these elements have to be combined together in a sensible course. As I said, so this is on this picture. So this is the introductory page for the online course that we offer, Professional Digital Competence for English Teachers. And you can see there are lots of, it's really multimodal, lots of videos, lots of resources, links to the pages, so with the resources. So the elements in MOOCs, again, they are textual information, video information. It can be audio resources like podcasts, for example. It can be discussion forums, quizzes, again, for students to check their understanding, and assignments that they have to complete and deliver. So how do we organize them to make a meaningful course that students can engage in? So in a way, if we kind of, take a psychological perspective on the learning process, so how do these elements, these digital tools, can acquire a psychological significance for learners to engage in the learning process? So how do learners make meaning of these resources in these courses? In a way, so as I said, so how these tools, if I say Vygotskian cultural historical perspective, how these tools can gradually become signs to drive learners' learning process or students' learning process. So we've conducted, as I said, we've conducted some studies, and in these studies that I show you at the moment, so we looked at the role of videos that we use in our online courses to assist students' learning. Videos are the central resources in not only in our courses, but in the majority of online courses that are offered internationally. And actually, when we collected data from our courses, and we collected over 4 years, when we analyzed the data, so we saw that there are 3 groups of students or 3 functional 3 groups of students that used videos for different purposes. And videos in our courses, particularly the course that we collected the data from over 4 years, this is kind of an instrumental course that teaches teachers how to use different educational software. So the videos that are included in this course are mostly so-called tutorials, so how-to videos. Interestingly, we found out that these videos can be used for orienting purposes, which means before engaging in the course, before actually starting reading any textual information on the course, the students actually click on the videos to make sense what the course is about. So basically, the videos is the first resource that the students engage with when they start learning online. So they click on the videos to orient themselves and to make sense of the content of the module or the course as such. Another group of students, and this was the majority of students, who used videos for executive support. So when they were assigned a task to complete, they were going back to the videos and they were playing and replaying these videos. And these videos, in a way, helped them to perform the tasks that they were supposed to complete. And the last group of the students, there was a really interesting finding, which we didn't think that actually happens with our students. So once they've completed the task, before they submit the task, they were replaying the videos again to kind of validate and assess themselves whether they completed the task properly. So, and how the task that the projects that they've developed correlates with their assessment requirements and actually the information that was transmitted through the videos. So basically the videos were used for three main purposes. These orienting purposes. What students do, they click on the videos before they engage in online courses to make sense of what the course is about. And then executive purposes, the videos assisted students in to complete their tasks. And then the control purpose, basically it's kind of, with the absence of the teachers, the students validate themselves, how they complete the task, where the task correlates to the assessment criteria. Another study that we conducted, actually, this is quite a new, fresh study that came out in November 2020. We looked at how students engaged in online courses. So when we design an online course, so as Diana said, we offer students, and particularly, so it's an XMOOC, which offers a sequential progression of the activities in the online course. So we were interested to see whether students follow this sequential progression that we offer in the course. In a way, by laying out this design, we offer so-called these epistemic practices, so how the students are supposed. So first they're supposed to read the text, and then they're supposed to engage watching the videos, and then they're supposed to probably engage with the task, and so on and so on. So whether they follow this sequential progresses of the activities that we offer them. And the findings were really interesting, because in this study we said that only 50% of the students, half of all participants, that follow the sequential progression that we offer in the course. And actually, other 50%, they engage in doing something different. So basically, some of the students went straight to the task and looked what task has to be submitted in a particular module. And then they choose the information and the resources that they needed to complete this task. Some of the students went to the, again, end of unit multiple choice test and tried to complete this test in order to understand what they know already and what they don't know. So, and the things that they didn't know, they went to the module and they picked up and selectively read the resources that helped them to kind of fill in the gaps in their knowledge to complete the final test. Some of the students, again, used videos, again, clicked on all the videos to make sense, from all the resources. And only after they engaged in reading the textual information and so on. So in a way, so the main conclusion is no matter, so if we offer students the sequential progression, so it's not taken for granted that the students would follow the sequential progression, So in the real learning, they might actually find their own ways to engage with the resources that we offer them in the course by creating their so-called their own learning trajectories. So, and in doing so, they look for their own ways of learning, basically, how to make sense of the resources that we offer them in online course. And this obviously brings us to the discussion on the instrumental psychological tools that was initiated in the work of Vygotsky long time ago. And, in his early works, which back in 1920s, Vygotsky started with the critique of Köhler's experiments, the German scientists who actually did the experiments on the tool use with apes and humans. And actually, Köhler showed that since apes use also tools, so basically they can be as intelligent as humans. So there is no difference between animals or apes tools used and human tool use. Vygotsky argued against such findings, and he said that for humans, tools are used differently and tools have psychological significance, whether for animals, tools don't have psychological significance. Well, as I said here, his argument was that human use of material, conceptual, linguistic mediational tools in the context of social practical activity connected a person and the surrounding environment. Tools do connect the animal also with the surrounding environment, but also the tools never used in the social practical activity with animals, and obviously they don't have psychological significance with animals. So, however, for humans, when tools are employed in this social practical activity, they initiate changes in human consciousness and they acquire special meanings to become signs. For Vygotsky, the psychological significance of tool science for the development of human consciousness made them different from animals' tool use. Vygotsky's argument about the tools acquiring psychological significance to become signs was very much addressed by Galperin, who was a contemporary of Vygotsky, and particularly in his candidate dissertation, Psychological Significance and Difference Between Tool Use by Humans and Auxiliary Means by Animals, where he argued that there was a fundamental psychological difference between the tool developed by humans and auxiliary means used by animals. Galperin wrote, without doubt, human tools essentially not only encapsulate human intellect's labor and reflect the process of humanization of apes, but they indicate a new line in the development of human social consciousness. On the contrary, animals' tools are accidental, occasional, and they reflect the nature of animals' activities. In comparison with humans' true tools, animals' auxiliary means cannot be preserved for later use, and they don't have defined areas of application. The functions of animals' auxiliary means are not expressed in their shapes, and most often these means are of natural origin. What is most important is that animals' meals are not collected with and are not employed in the system of social production. So by drawing the line, Galperin argues that animals' auxiliary means are external intermediate material links of animals' meaningful activity, so it's also link an animal with the natural environment. However, these tools do not determine animals' activity. On the contrary, animals' behavior determines the nature of tools used by them. Therefore, the characteristic features of animals' tools should be identified by analyzing animals' activities with these tools, which are different from human tool-mediated activities. Whether the human tools, similarly, to uncover the functional significance. So to examine the relationship between the person and the tool, the following questions comes to the fore. So what functional significance does this tool carry? Can this tool be considered a mean to achieve the subject desired purpose? If the tool does not encapsulate the way of working with it to achieve the desired purpose, then the tool is used according to the logic of the acting subject. However, if the tool has been constructed to achieve the desired purpose, then the acting subject using this tool in order to achieve the desired purpose will comply with the objective requirements and the system of operation encapsulated in this tool. This is really important because, this is what makes actually human tools, human psychological tools, different from animals' tools or any tools that don't have this psychological significance. So basically, tools that have psychological significance encapsulate certain operations that are encapsulated in these tools. So how the tool presents itself for the acting subject and which opportunities are recognized by the acting subject in the tools depends on the reality the acting subject belongs to. Like for animals, it's biological environments and therefore the instinctive behavior. And therefore the tools are used for the instinctive behavior of the animals. However, for human social environments, meanings and operations of public tools that are encapsulated in these tools should be revealed. So as I said, there are two, so as a conclusion, so there are two main operations with these tools. A kind of a system of mediated operations encapsulated in the tools developed during social tool-mediated practices, and a system of manual operations developed in the process of using a hand as a natural tool. So Galperian made a conclusion that animals actually use tools as extension of their limbs. The tools acquire the arm's functions, and therefore the tool's own functional significance appear to be downplayed. They're called instrumental tools. However, when mastering a tool, an arm can comply with the requirements of the operations of these tools, and therefore it acquires the tool's functional significance. So these tools have psychological significance, and these tools can be defined as psychological tools. So basically, so these two categories have implications for considering instrumental tools, so instrumental digital tools and instrumental psychological tools in digital environments that I'm going to talk a little bit later. So just a few pictures to illustrate how animals actually use tools. Obviously, so we can see that in the majority, for example, in the first picture, the animal is using the tool as an extension of the limb to reach something, out of water. In the second picture, it's actually as an extension and to make the limbs thinner, actually, but it's still, it's the action could have been performed with just only an animal limb. In the last picture, for example, to make the limb a little bit heavier, but it's also, this tool, the stone basically does not encapsulate any particular practice that has to be revealed, so the same work, the same action could have been performed with animal limb. However, this is different from here. So Galperian concluded that tools that had psychological significance for humans were characterized by the historically and culturally developed operations encapsulated in these tools, and these operations have to be mastered by humans to be able to employ these tools. So in my further presentation, and we can return to this question, I would like to pose the question, when is a tool? How can Galperian's elaborations about instrumental and psychological tools be useful to explain the difference between digital instrumental tools and digital psychological tools? Yeah, so while I'm talking further, please think about this question, and that digital tools, remember, we consider these elements in the online course. So in what way these elements in the online course / digital tools are just only instrumental, or in what way can they acquire psychological significance to become digital psychological tools for students? So again, this process of sign mediation and internalization of tools, humans develop their ability to voluntarily manage their behavior. So this process of the transfer from tool to sign is absolutely crucial for humans kind of to be able to understand the reality and to be able to generalize the reality they live in. And so this process of internalization, or the overcome from the external to the internal, from the external tool to the external sign, was not really addressed by Vygotsky, but was conceptualized quite in details by in Galperian's work by identifying these phases of the development of mental actions. And these phases they are presented in the articles that I've mentioned, but just, and obviously, people from Ukraine, I'm sure you've seen these phases before. So They are motivation, orientation, materialized action, communicated thinking, dialogical thinking, and acting mentally. There are quite a few publications, actually, both earlier publications and quite a few publications in the West that discuss this, learning process, going through these phases. So what happens in the motivation area phase, what happens in the orientation phase, what happens in the phase of materialized action, communicated thinking, dialogical thinking, and acting mentally. And you can read these descriptions in the articles again. So, for example, in the orienting part, the planning of learning activity happens, which means identifying the outcome of the action, the identifying the units or parts of the outcome of the action, the tools that will be available for the students, and the overview of the entire activity, so-called generalized orienting scheme of the action. So how students are supposed to involve in the activity and proceed. So what are they supposed to be first, second, third in the activity, in the learning activity? There are three types of orientation. It can be an incomplete orientation where learning happens through trial and error. And basically, well, this is a very minimum type of orientation offered for the students. So basically, students are looking for the right way to learn through trial and error, looking for the ways, how to make sense of the resources, of the digital tools offered them in the course. And then the complete orientation, where the learners are informed in detail about the characteristics of the target concepts and how they will engage in learning. And it's actually a step-by-step instruction, what to do first, second, third. So it's an effective way to engage in learning. However, it's effective to complete a certain task, but it doesn't develop a broad understanding of what it means to learn online, for example, or what it means to engage in the learning process. And the last type of orientation is complete and constructed by learners following an approach aimed at identifying the essential characteristics of the target concepts. Using this approach, a specific orientation can be constructed, suited to solve the problem at hand. And with this type of orientation, learners can develop both conceptual understanding, but also a broad understanding what it means to learn in particular subject areas, or for example, what it means to learn online, whether if it's orientation used in an online course. And then what follows is the phase of materialized action, where learners interact with the material or materials resources that encapsulate useful information, that encapsulate knowledge the students have to engage with. And then they transfer, they make sense of the material resources in the phase of communicated thinking by engaging in interaction with material objects and making sense of these objects in speech. In the phase of material action, the action is directed outside and it connects the learner with the external objects and the outside world. After a while, the learners transfer to the phase of dialogical thinking. They start to develop their understanding for themselves by substituting the external oriented speech with this image. In dialogical thinking, the action is directed inside the learner, establishing communication with himself or herself with another person. And then finally, the action is performed in hidden speech, which Kalperin refers as to acting mentally. In this phase, artificial fragmentation into individual units is suspended and the action acquires its natural flow. In this phase, the maximum automation of the action can be achieved. So these phases of the development of mental actions can reflect a pathway to creating sign meanings in the specifically designed learning environment. And so based on the cultural historical approach and the legacy of Vygotsky and Galperin, so we identify the design, we can identify, that is, or suggest the design principles that can be used to design an online environment. So the first principle aims that before you start designing a course and an online course, you have to identify the target concept that the students have to develop their understanding about, and the essential features, essential characteristics of this concept, and the sequence in which these features may be presented to learners. Then the second principle is to organize the learning activity according to the third type of orientation, complete and constructed by learners. The third principle is important to present an overview of the activity, a so-called generalized orienting scheme of action that will show how the learner's learning path, what learners has to do, the steps of the learning activity, learning trajectory. The next principle is that some of the resources have to be introduced in the materialized form. Also, to make sense of these resources, social interactions have to be integrated in the design. And also the feedback provided should assist learners in identifying the essential features of the target concept and facilitate their understanding how to learn online. These principles have been published in an absolutely fresh articles that came out online on the 15th of November, in which I discuss that this principle, if to adopt this design principle, so by engaging in learning in online environments designed after such principles, teachers may develop digital identity, which actually can enhance the digital competence of their students. So just some examples, how these principles are used or implemented in the courses that we develop. So, for example, this is the general scheme or the general progression of the activities in the module in one of the MOOCs that we develop. It's PDC, Professional Digital Competence MOOC. So in the first, considering that the orienting information is really important for the students, so every single course starts up with the explicit in orienting information. So what students are going to learn, so-called competency aims, learning outcomes, which tasks they are to engage, and how they can proceed in this learning. So we pay really much efforts and much attention to developing this orienting information. Considering the phase of materialized action, the next phase goes to presenting some material or materialized resources for the students, which can be textual information on the web pages, and then video resources and different research articles that we recommend students to read. To make sense of these resources, in the next phase, we offer students to engage in the discussion forums and complete small multiple choice tests to develop their understandings. The discussion forums, they are usually initiated as a reflection question, which we post, and the students are supposed to post their reflections on this discussion question. After that, considering the phase of dialogical thinking, the students are offered to engage in the individual tasks and often their examination tasks they have to submit. And the course finishes with a big multiple choice test that actually checks students' understanding of the target concept they have to enjoy it in. So, for example, this is the content of one of the modules included in the Professional Digital Competence MOOC. For example, teachers are offered to develop their understanding of the multimodal texts. So in the first part, again, we introduce the issue of multimodality, the theoretical resources that they have to engage in. Again, they engage in the discussion forum, and then a small multiple choice test. The second part, again, how to create a multimodality in English language, for example. How to use multimodal text for teaching and learning English, how to create multimodal text. Again, lots of resources that we ask students to engage in. And again, to make sense of these resources, students are supposed to engage in the discussion and test themselves. And then the last part of the module is the examination of assignments, where the teachers are asked to develop their multimodal tests. So, to conclude, learners' actions and interactions in digital environments bring attention to the tensions and contradictions that may rise between digital tools and the design of digital environments. So, informed by Galperin's theory, the suggested design principles of digital environments suspend these tensions and contradictions by facilitating learners' move from the interactions with digital tools, material actions, through developing meanings first in the collaborative discussions, communicated actions, and then in learners' individual solving target assignments, dialogical thinking. In doing so, the trajectory of developing assigned meaning can be observed. And by following such a learning trajectory, not the tensions and contradictions, but the interplay of digital tools or the elements of the course and the design of digital environments comes to the fore. So obviously, emerging new media give rise to new epistemology, leading to discoveries of new worlds, and the position of humans in relation to these worlds must be understood. Therefore, further research is needed to examine learning and teaching in digital media constructed according to the suggested design principles. And such research will contribute to our understanding of the pedagogical potential of digital media aimed to enhance learning and the development of learners in online environments. These are the references of the publications.